Hello, and welcome to Comparatively Speaking, where we explain chemistry through analogy. It's time for the famous, notorious sweatshirt analogy. Notorious because when I invented this analogy for the first time on the fly in class, one of my all-time favorite students said, "Wait a minute, that happened to me and I never got my sweatshirt back." So the sweatshirt analogy is an analogy for ionic bonding. So we have to go back to the notion of protons and neutrons are in the center of the atom in the nucleus. Electrons are orbiting around it. There are an equal number in a neutral atom of protons and electrons. Electrons are much less massive, they're much smaller, but they do balance out the charge. And electrons get sorted in orbits around the nucleus until you have only what's left over in the valence. So look to the valence analogy for an explanation of the valence just being the outer orbit of the atom where they can only hold 8 electrons total, up to 8. So you'll have some that have only 1 out there and some that have 7 or 8. And that leads us to the notion of ionic bonding. So an ion is any atom that has gained or given away 1 or more electrons. So they all start out neutral. They encounter each other. Sometimes electrons get pulled off of the valence from one and added to the valence of another. And even after the bond breaks up, kind of one party hangs on to the electron. You're an ion whether you gain or lose the electron. You can be a positive ion, which means you lost an electron, and you're called a cation, or a negative ion, which means you gained an electron, or 2 or 3, and you're called an anion. The sweatshirt is the electron in a relationship. Now, you're dating somebody new and they can do no wrong, and you go to the football game together, and then you're wearing your favorite sweatshirt, and the person you're dating is suddenly cold and borrows your sweatshirt. That's the electron. The person you're dating is someone like maybe chlorine or oxygen or fluorine, something that's more electronegative. They are closer to a full valence. They're over on the right-hand side of the periodic table. Maybe they have 6 or 7 in the valence and they need 8. So they really want that electron, or that sweatshirt in this case. And maybe you're just, sodium or calcium, something over in group 1 or 2 on the left-hand side of the periodic table, and you've got that electron as your outer layer in your valence, but don't really need it as much, and you just kind of blindly lend it to the other atom. Well, unfortunately, I've got news for you. When you guys break up, you're not getting your sweatshirt back. And when I borrowed this sweatshirt, I wasn't even cold. I just wanted your sweatshirt. So that is an analogy for how electrons can be transferred. And if it's not a shared situation, like a covalent bond, then the electrons are not returned when they are borrowed. The end of the story for my student is that this is kind of private. Well, okay, so he tried to get the sweatshirt back, and she interpreted that to mean that they were dating again because they had broken up, and so she re-borrowed it. And that happened, I think, 3 times. And finally, he would report back in class and say it's not working. And finally, he had his mom drive him to her house and wait in the driveway while he went to the door and said, "I want my sweatshirt back." So making him the hero of everyone who has heard this story. So this concludes the sweatshirt analogy and this is ionic bonding only. And I know that you have your choice of teachers who will tell other people's private anecdotes on the internet, and I'm so grateful that you've chosen this teacher on this particular day. Enjoy.